The sun was high, the sky clear, and the sound of water rippling in the pool was the very definition of peace. Marcus Williams leaned back on his lounge chair, sipping an iced drink, finally enjoying the luxury he had worked decades to earn. For him, this pool wasn't just water in his backyard, it was proof that hard work and sacrifice could pay off. But that peace was about to be shattered. Out of nowhere, shadows fell across the shimmering water. Marcus lifted his sunglasses and saw them, two men in dark uniforms, badges gleaming, moving with false authority. Their boots crunched on the stone as they approached, eyes cold, jaws tight. "Sir, you can't be here," one barked. Marcus blinked. "Excuse me? You're trespassing. HOA rules. This pool is not for you." A cold chill ran through the summer air, not because Marcus had done anything wrong, but because he knew exactly what this was. Harassment. Intimidation. A test. But these so-called HOA cops had no idea who they were dealing with. They saw only what they wanted to see, a black man by a luxury pool. What they didn't see was the discipline of a former soldier, the mind of a businessman, and the patience of someone who'd fought bigger battles than this. They thought they held power. But Marcus had a move they'd never expect, one that would turn their scheme inside out. Marcus Williams wasn't just another homeowner. He was the kind of man who had built his life brick by brick, refusing to let the odds define him. Born and raised in a tough neighborhood, he'd clawed his way up through discipline, education, and eventually, entrepreneurship. By 45, he was a millionaire with several businesses under his belt. But Marcus never wore his wealth on his sleeve, he wore it in the quiet dignity of a man who knew he had earned every inch of his success. His home reflected that dignity. A sprawling property on the edge of an upscale community, its centerpiece was the glistening backyard pool. For Marcus, that pool was more than just a luxury, it was a symbol. It represented summers he never had as a kid, moments of calm he'd fought hard to create, and a promise to himself that he would enjoy the fruits of his labor. But there was a problem, one that came not from within his home, but from beyond his fence. The neighborhood's HOA. At the head of it sat Miss Thornton, a woman who styled herself as Queen of the Block. With a sharp tongue and sharper prejudice, she carried herself as if the entire neighborhood owed her allegiance. She had a reputation for being controlling, measuring grass blades, handing out violation slips for the smallest of things, and gossiping about who belonged and who didn't. And in her eyes, Marcus never belonged. From the day he moved in, she questioned his presence. "Are you renting?" she had asked with a tight smile, ignoring the fact that Marcus had paid for the property in full. Every barbecue he hosted, every guest who visited, seemed to violate some imaginary rule. And behind her thinly veiled comments was a darker undertone, one that Marcus recognized instantly. But Marcus wasn't one to bite at every insult. His military training had taught him patience, his business life had taught him strategy. He wasn't going to let Miss Thornton steal his peace of mind. He kept to himself, greeted his supportive neighbors politely, and tried to live quietly. Yet, Thornton wasn't satisfied. She thrived on control. And Marcus's calm demeanor only fueled her determination to push harder. That's when the first signs of trouble appeared. Notices slipped under his door about unauthorized gatherings. A letter accusing him of overuse of his pool. Ridiculous warnings about disturbing the balance of the neighborhood. Marcus saw through it all. These weren't rules, they were intimidation tactics. But he underestimated just how far Miss Thornton was willing to go to prove her imagined power. Because soon, it wouldn't just be paper warnings or angry letters. It would be boots in his backyard. Fake badges. Manufactured authority. And on the day it happened, Marcus realized this wasn't just about pool rules, it was about dignity, identity, and standing his ground against an enemy who thought intimidation would break him. The first real confrontation came on a blistering Saturday afternoon. Marcus had just finished a few laps in the pool, the kind of workout that cleared his mind. He was toweling off when he noticed movement at the edge of his property. Two men in dark uniforms pushed open the side gate as if they owned the place. Their badges glinted in the sun, but something about them looked off. The uniforms didn't match, the patches were generic, and their boots were scuffed in a way no real enforcement officer would allow. "Afternoon," one said curtly, hand resting near his belt. "We're with HOA security. You're in violation of pool regulations." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Violation? This is my pool." The second man stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the stone tiles. "Sir, we've had complaints. No unauthorized use of community facilities." Marcus's jaw tightened. Community facilities? This wasn't the HOA's pool. It was in his backyard, fenced off, private, and on property he owned outright. "You're mistaken," Marcus said evenly, voice calm but firm. "This is my home. My pool. You're trespassing." But the fake cops didn't back down. The first one smirked, pulling out a clipboard. "Funny, because according to our records, this pool isn't registered under community standards. We need to see ID and proof of ownership." Marcus stared at them in disbelief. They weren't just bluffing, they were doubling down. Within minutes, the noise drew attention. Neighbors peeked through curtains. A couple stepped onto their porch, whispering as they watched the scene unfold. Marcus could feel the weight of their eyes. Some were sympathetic, some judgmental, and others were curious to see if the new guy would finally be put in his place. The men kept pressing. "We can fine you. We can call in backup. This will go on your HOA record." Inside, Marcus's frustration simmered. He had faced down armed combatants overseas, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals across boardrooms, and yet here he was, being harassed at his own pool by imposters in knockoff uniforms. And the worst part? He knew exactly who was behind it. Miss Thornton. It was her style, bully first, fabricate authority later. She wanted a spectacle. She wanted Marcus humiliated in front of the neighborhood, reduced to a man begging for permission to enjoy his own property. But Marcus wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. "I'll tell you this once," Marcus said, lowering his sunglasses and meeting their eyes. "You have no authority here. Leave now." The men exchanged glances. Instead of retreating, one leaned in, lowering his voice just enough for Marcus to catch it. "People like you never last in neighborhoods like this. Pack up before it gets worse." Those words landed like a punch. It wasn't about rules. It never had been. This was about race, about class, and about the quiet hostility Marcus had endured since moving in. And now it was boiling to the surface, thinly disguised under a mask of regulation. Marcus felt the sting, but he didn't show it. He simply tightened his grip on the towel and stood his ground. The men lingered, circling, posturing like predators trying to intimidate their prey. Finally, after realizing Marcus wouldn't flinch, they muttered threats about fines and reports before retreating through the gate. But the damage was done. Neighbors had seen it all. Some shook their heads in disapproval, not at the fake cops, but at Marcus, as if he had somehow caused the scene. That night, as Marcus sat in his living room, Emma, his teenage niece visiting for the summer, asked softly, "Uncle Marcus, why do they hate you?" He swallowed hard. How do you explain to a child that sometimes, hate doesn't need a reason? That sometimes, success itself makes you a target? Marcus promised her one thing: "Don't worry, sweetheart. They won't win." But deep down, he knew Miss Thornton wasn't finished. The fake cops had been a test. And if he didn't push back, they'd come again. Stronger. Louder. Bolder. And that's exactly what happened. Over the next week, Marcus received bogus violation notices. Noise complaints. Unauthorized renovations. Even a warning about the color of his pool tiles. Every note dripped with hostility. Every rule was fabricated. Then, on another sweltering afternoon, it escalated again. The same two fake cops returned, this time with Ms. Thornton herself striding behind them, arms crossed, lips curled in satisfaction. She was done hiding in the shadows. Now she wanted confrontation. The second time they showed up, it was worse. Marcus had been grilling by the poolside, the smell of barbecue drifting lazily into the summer air. Emma was splashing in the shallow end, her laughter a reminder of why Marcus had worked so hard to give his family these simple, beautiful moments. That's when the side gate banged open. The two HOA cops stormed in like they were executing a raid. And behind them came Miss Thornton, sunglasses perched on her nose, clipboard in hand, walking with the smug confidence of someone who believed she was untouchable. Well, Mr. Williams," she said, her voice dripping with false politeness. "I warned you about violating community rules. Looks like you didn't listen." Marcus straightened, tongs still in his hand, the grill sizzling behind him. "This is my home, Miss Thornton. You have no authority here. And these men," he gestured at the imposters, "are trespassing." Thornton smirked. "They're HOA enforcement, and they have every right to inspect." The cops spread out, one circling toward the pool, the other toward the grill. Emma climbed out of the water, clutching her towel, eyes wide with fear. Marcus moved instinctively, stepping between them and his niece. "You don't touch anything. You don't question her. You leave. Now." But Thornton wasn't here for negotiation. She was here for domination. She raised her voice, making sure the nearby neighbors heard. "Mr. Williams is in violation of multiple HOA codes. Unregistered gatherings, unapproved pool modifications, excessive noise. This property could be subject to fines, even seizure." Marcus could see people peeking over fences, phones in hand, recording. Thornton wanted this spectacle. She wanted him painted as a problem homeowner, a disruptor, someone who didn't belong. The fake cop near the grill leaned closer, muttering, "One call, and we'll have you removed. You don't want your niece seeing that, do you?" Marcus's hand clenched into a fist at his side. His patience was thinning. But he held back, because if he snapped too soon, Thornton would win. Instead, he spoke calmly, though his voice carried an edge of steel. "If you don't leave my property, I'll have real law enforcement here in 10 minutes. Thornton laughed. "Oh, please. By the time anyone shows up, you'll already be cited. And trust me, Marcus, no one in this neighborhood is on your side." Those words hit like a gut punch. Because looking around, Marcus could see some neighbors nodding along, whispering, and siding with her. Not all, but enough to make him feel the sting of isolation. Thornton's plan was working. She wanted him cornered, humiliated, and broken down until he either complied or left. Emma tugged at his arm, whispering, "Uncle Marcus, don't let them take our home." That's when Marcus knew this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her safety, her sense of belonging, and her faith in him. He couldn't just stand back. The tension climbed higher. The fake cops moved closer, one pulling out a zip tie from his belt, as if preparing to detain him. Thornton's smirk widened, certain she had won. But inside Marcus, something shifted. The patience, the restraint, the quiet endurance, it was over. These people thought they could break him with intimidation and lies. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The air around the pool went heavy, as if the sun itself had paused to watch what came next. One of the fake cops took a step closer, zip ties dangling from his hand. "Turn around, sir. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Marcus's eyes narrowed. He had tolerated enough. His voice dropped, calm but lethal. "You touch me, and I promise you, your night ends in a real police station, explaining why you impersonated an officer." The man hesitated, but Thornton barked, "Do it. He's in violation. He's trespassing in spirit if not in law." That was it. Marcus dropped the barbecue tongs onto the grill with a metallic clang, squared his shoulders, and let years of discipline flow back into his veins. "Emma," he said without looking back, "go inside." She darted into the house, slamming the sliding door shut. Now it was just Marcus, Thornton, and her hired imposters. The fake cop lunged forward, reaching for his arm. But Marcus wasn't an ordinary homeowner, he was a decorated veteran, trained in close combat. In one fluid move, he sidestepped, seized the man's wrist, and twisted. The imposter yelped in pain as the zip ties clattered to the ground. Marcus shoved him backward into the fence, pinning him effortlessly. The other rushed in, but Marcus pivoted, sweeping his leg out just enough to send the man sprawling across the stone tiles, gasping for breath. Thornton's smirk shattered into horror. What do you think you're doing? This is assault. Marcus loomed over the two groaning men, his voice sharp as a blade. No, this is self-defense. And now the entire neighborhood knows exactly what you brought onto my property. He pulled out his phone, already dialing. Let's see how the real cops feel about two men impersonating officers and trespassing. Thornton's face drained of color. Wait! You don't need to call anyone, we can settle this privately. But it was too late. Marcus turned on his Bluetooth speaker system, amplifying his voice so every neighbor could hear. Attention, everyone watching, these are not officers. They are imposters, sent here by Ms. Thornton to harass me on my own property. I have video proof from my security cameras. And the police are on their way. Gasps rippled through the fences. Phones that had been recording secretly now swung openly, capturing every moment. Thornton's empire of intimidation was collapsing before her eyes. The fake cops tried to scramble up, but Marcus stood his ground, blocking the gate. No one leaves until the real authorities arrive. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens cut through the thick summer air. The imposters froze. Thornton's lips trembled, her usual arrogance evaporating as she realized this had spun out of her control. The police pulled up, real uniforms stepping into the backyard, real authority radiating from their presence. Marcus released his hold, raising his hands calmly. Officers, thank you for coming. These men broke into my home, claimed to be law enforcement, and threatened me and my niece. I have full video surveillance of the entire incident. The cops turned to the two imposters. Badges. Now. The men stuttered, fumbling with their fake IDs. It took less than 30 seconds for the officers to confirm what Marcus already knew: they were frauds. Handcuffs clicked shut as the imposters were dragged toward the squad car. Thornton tried to back away, but Marcus's voice stopped her cold. Not so fast. You sent them here. You orchestrated this. All eyes turned on her. The neighbors. The officers. Everyone who had once whispered behind curtains was now staring openly. Thornton's carefully built image as queen of the HOA was crumbling, piece by piece. One officer stepped closer. Ma'am, we'll need you to come down to the station for questioning. Thornton's jaw dropped. Questioning? This is my neighborhood. I run the HOA. He's the one who doesn't belong. Marcus locked eyes with her, his voice steady but thunderous. No, Thornton. What doesn't belong here is hate. What doesn't belong here is abuse of power. Today, that ends. The crowd of neighbors murmured, some clapping softly, others nodding in agreement. Thornton's power base had shifted in a single moment. As the imposters were hauled away and Thornton was escorted toward the police car, Marcus stood tall by his pool, the place she had tried to use as a weapon against him. Instead, it had become the ground where he reclaimed his dignity, his respect, and his rightful place in the community. By the time the police cars pulled away, the sun had dipped low, painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple. The air was different now, lighter, freer, as if the whole neighborhood had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. Marcus stood at the edge of his pool, shoulders squared, the quiet hum of cicadas filling the silence. For the first time since moving in, he felt like he wasn't standing alone. His neighbors, the same ones who once watched silently, now stepped forward. Marcus, one older man said, voice cautious, I didn't realize what she was doing. We should have spoken up sooner. Another neighbor, a young mother holding her toddler, nodded. We saw her bully people before, but with you, she crossed every line. You didn't deserve that. Marcus gave a small nod. He wasn't the kind of man who needed apologies to validate his worth, but hearing them mattered. It showed the tide was turning. Later that week, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. With video evidence circulating and Thornton under investigation, her position was untenable. In a unanimous vote, she was stripped of her role. The very woman who once ruled the neighborhood with fear was now banned from holding any HOA authority ever again. As for the imposters, charges were filed, impersonating officers, trespassing, and harassment. The law was no longer a weapon against Marcus, it was working in his favor. On the following Saturday, Marcus hosted another barbecue. This time, there was no tension, no glares from Thornton's porch. Instead, laughter and music floated through the air. Neighbors joined, some bringing food, others just bringing open hearts. The pool glistened under string lights as children splashed and played, free, safe, unafraid. Emma looked up at him, smiling brightly. "Uncle Marcus, you won." Marcus chuckled softly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "No, sweetheart. We stood our ground. That's bigger than winning." As he gazed out at the pool, now a symbol of resilience rather than conflict, he knew one thing for certain: bullies only win when good people stay silent. And tonight, silence had been broken forever. And that, my friends, is how one man turned the tables on an entire system of harassment. Marcus didn't just protect his home, he exposed corruption, stripped power from a bully, and proved that dignity and courage can outshine intimidation every single time. This story isn't just about a pool or an HOA, it's about what happens when someone decides they've had enough. It's about standing tall in the face of lies, refusing to bow down, and showing others that fear only has power if you let it. Now, if you enjoyed this story, do me a favor, hit that like button so more people can hear it. Drop a comment below, what would you have done if fake cops stormed your backyard? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story like this one. We've got plenty more tales of justice, courage, and shocking twists coming your way. Because in a world full of HOAs, Karens, and fake authority, sometimes the best weapon you have is the truth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.